Welcome to the High Pass Podcast. This is Derek Blackburn, your host, and this week I have Alex Allinson, producer and co-owner of The Bridge Sound and Stage in Cambridge, Massachusetts. First, I want to announce a change in format. This is because of your suggestions and requests to me. I've read your emails, your messages on Instagram, your reviews, the polls that you've answered at the end of my podcast on Spotify, and I'm taking everything you're suggesting into account. So we're going to do something a little different this week. The first thing I want to talk about is the community, and specifically the audio engineering community here in the Boston metro area. In my opinion, the community is robust. There are many freelance engineers. There are many commercial studios and project studios, and there's plenty of people working at places like the recording company. And there's even quite a few studios that have an open door policy for freelance engineers. Now, there are a lot of other problems that I can address that do affect audio engineers, but specifically, I just want to concentrate on talking about people who produce, record, mix, and master audio. The question I get most often is, how can I participate in this community? And my answer is always, join a community arts organization. You can join a community arts organization in your town through the Cultural Council. In Massachusetts, we have local community councils, and it's up to them to disseminate grants to people in the community who have culturally relevant projects that benefit their communities directly. You could also join a professional organization like the Audio Engineering Society or the Recording Academy. The Audio Engineering Society is aimed at audio professionals mostly. Recording Academy is people who work in the music industry and related fields, although there is quite a bit of overlap between the two. There's too many benefits to list here as I'm speaking to you, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me or the Audio Engineering Society Boston section at bostonaes.org, and we'll try to answer any questions you might have. I definitely understand there's people out there who are like, I don't want to join an organization. I don't want to pay any money to some entity to do what? Totally understand that. But I'm telling you right now, it's the best way to meet the people you want to meet in your community. So consider it. All right, let's check in with Alex over at The Bridge. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing great. You were just saying that it's been quite a few years since we've seen each other. Mm-hmm. And just like seeing you and the studio behind you, I do miss those days. Gotta get back to those days again.
You come back and visit sometime.
I will. I'll have to. So let's just get right into it. I want you to tell me a bit about yourself, kind of like, when you were growing up, how did you get involved in music? Were you like in school band, or did you pick up a guitar or play drums or something like that? Like, how was it that you kind of got interested in doing this?
Well, guitar is my main instrument, and I picked that up from my grandfather. He was the guitarist in my family. Like, my mother was musical. She played piano and sang and stuff like that. But guitar was something that I was interested at a pretty young age by way of my grandfather. I got my first guitar probably like 4th, 5th grade. And like at that point, like, it was, just like this shitty little acoustic guitar, but I was able to bang on it and, make noise. But even before that, like, music was always just something that like I always was like drawn to. I was just always interested in. I always like to say that my first recording experience was walking around with one of those Fisher-Price recording things with a cassette of Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London in it, and it had a little microphone on it, so I was walking around making noise with that. But when I started to like actually get into music was probably like 4th, 5th grade. Started taking guitar lessons, focusing on that, and by way of that, start playing in rock bands, and at middle school was probably like I was still kind of like poorly playing sports and like doing music, and I got to the point where like I had to pick one thing to kind of pursue, but not be like mediocre at both. So I started to like gravitate towards taking music classes. Like I said, I was taking guitar lessons. I played in the high school jazz band. I sang in high school chorale. I took music theory courses. I took jazz theory courses. Basically anything that like my school had to offer musically, I was like into it. Like I remember they had a popular music course. It's just like anything that had music attached to it, I really tried to submerge myself in. In addition to playing in, high school, I played in thrash bands. I played in a lot of metal bands.
So at your school, they had a pretty robust arts program then.
It was not. It sounds robust when I say it out loud like that, but there was like probably like 3 or 4 kids in every class. There wasn't really like a lot of support in it. There were very small like arts classes, and they did what they could. And I had some wonderful teachers. Like some of my high school music teachers were so important to my development as far as not only a musician but just as a person. I was very close to all 3 of them. But they did what they could with what the school allotted them to. There was definitely more of an emphasis where I grew up on sports and stuff like that. But I feel fortunate when speaking to other folks in their like musical experiences in high school to have what I did have.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this on previous podcasts. I'm really surprised that there are some schools of people who, went to school around here in Massachusetts, that some of the school districts didn't have a fully formed arts and music program. And where I grew up, I mean, it was like the middle of nowhere, Illinois. And we had we had a marching band in middle school, like that it takes a lot of dedication on the students and the educators side to like put something like that together and develop that sort of program. So that's cool that you had that experience. So when you were in high school and you were kind of like getting out of the like more structured program and getting more into like I'm assuming like playing in bands and stuff like that, like what was how did that kind of formulate, like for example, like I met a lot of kids like in 7th and 8th grade at the school talent show. And I was just like, crap, there's all these other kids that play guitar and drums. Yeah. Where did they come from? What was that like for you?
I was just looking for kids in Metallica shirts or Slayer shirts, and we all kind of flocked together.
That's awesome.
There was a few of us. There was a lot of us, but there was a few of us, and we all played in bands. And then when we started playing in our band, we go to the neighboring towns, Knights of Columbus, and do a 10 bands for $10. And then you meet a bunch of cats who are way older than you, and in their like early 20s, maybe 30s, and you start playing shows with them. And when I look back at some of the shows I was playing when I was still a teenager, it's kind of crazy. My mom let me go out on a Tuesday night to play in like Hartford.
Right.
I feel like,
yeah.
But we did
also,
it. And
also that there were just people who were putting those shows on.
Yeah.
That there was just like this scene of people who just kind of knew how to, book a venue or, like sometimes like we played in like parish halls and stuff like that. It was just amazing. Somebody figured out like how to get a permit from the park district.
Yeah. Then you have to book a cop to stand outside and hide all the alcohol and, police that stuff. But I did a lot of that. But somewhere along the line, obviously, when you're in a band, you want to play shows and you want to write songs, but then eventually you decide you want to have a recording of something. And being 15, 16 years old, I didn't have any money that wasn't already invested in my musical equipment. And I didn't have any really like idea of like where to like go make a record. I mean, at this point, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, but when I was in high school, I settled in it's a pretty small cow town in Ellington. So like there wasn't like a lot of like, I couldn't like walk down the street and like find a recording studio. I had no idea where to like find that stuff. So what we did was we just kind of pooled our resources and like built like this like crappy little recording space in my parents' basement where we rehearsed. And that's when like I figured out that I love recording and producing music more than I did actually writing and performing it. Like, the other guys in the groups I played with, they just wanted to get something down so that we could show someone that we didn't suck and get on shows. I was like more about doing more takes, figuring out plugins, like the signal flow of it, making it work, making it better. I always wanted to tinker down there, and they had to basically drag me out of my parents' basement to start doing shows. And that's like when I figured, like, okay, like I like this, but this side of it is where I'm more drawn to. And I kind of ran with it after that. And that's where I kind of, figured out that this could be a thing, like this could be the thing instead of like just playing all the time.
Yeah. Do you recall what that first recording setup consisted of? Like, was it, you said plugin, so was it computer-based?
It took a while to get to the computer-based. So I remember we were walking into a Daddy's Junkie Music at the time to get, like, I don't know, some guitar strings or something, me and the guitarist in my band. Rest in peace. And I remember looking to my left on the floor right when I walked in, and there was this giant Yamaha 1604 16-channel mixer for $200. It was humongous. Like it had the road case with it too. Like we had to. I was just like, what? Let's buy this and bring this home to my basement, not knowing at all what to do with it. Just this giant 16-channel console. I literally, quick sidebar, I had it until I moved to Boston, and then I had to like sell it for $100 because it couldn't come with me to Boston. I kind of wish I still had it. But we brought that home and not knowing what to do with it at all. So we had, we had no tape, we had no like really means of doing that, but we had like all of these channels of everything. So what we did have though was a like Windows 98 Dell computer. So what we did was I got like this cheap version of a cakewalk program called Guitar Tracks. I think it allowed you to have like 8 inputs, 8 mono sources at all times. So for the first recordings, what we did was we got like this like shitty like Rode case of like mics to mic up the drums and like a bunch of SM57s as we mic'd up all of the drums into this 1604 like Yamaha thing, and like we could like hear like a mix on the board. And then what we did was we did a mono out of the board XLR, and we got an adapter and put that to 1/4 inch. And then we put the 1/4 inch into an 1/8 inch, and then we plugged it into the back of the Dell computer.
And what did
so we mixed the drums in real time.
Do you clip it out like completely?
Yeah. And then like mixed them down like on the board, and then recorded them into the DAW that way, like just like into the back of the computer. No mic pre's or anything. It sounded so bad, but like we captured the sound. That's just where it started. Like, and then after that we were just overdub everything. We only had 8 channels to work with. And I remember like the plugins that they had on there, I'm pretty sure they were like all like audio suite based. Like you couldn't just like turn them on and off. It's like if you wanted to put something on there, you had to like print it in real time. And I remember my bassist at the time like took one of my vocal parts and like printed a chorus effect on it, and we could no way of undoing it. So like the final recording just like had a bunch of chorus on it.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I've never heard of Guitar Tracks, but it sounds a lot like another piece of software that I used, which was Cool Edit Pro, which I know a lot of people remember Cool Edit Pro, but Guitar Tracks, I'm going to have to look that up later. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that's where it all began. You flash forward a few more years, my high school jazz professor, he like did an after school like recording program, which was like me and like one other kid. And they had like, he like got a license, I want to say like, this was like 2005, 2006, must have been like Pro Tools 5, 6 or something like that. But that was my first introduction to Pro Tools right there. And like, I still like kind of remember like how like blocky it was, like, and like how like clunky it was, but that I got to like mess around and like figure out like what a real DAW looked like, having more channels, interfacing, stuff like that. Like they had all of that stuff. They had like one of the really old like M-Box style things, like whatever they had back in 2006, I can't remember, but that was like my first like window into like, okay, this is how you like don't do it through like a bunch of adapters into the back of your Dell.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So when you were introduced to Pro Tools, you said you got a taste of that. Like after high school, when did you kind of graduate to the next level? When did you kind of assemble what would become like the next level of like your recording rig?
It took me a little bit to find my way. So like I knew that like I wanted to do something like audio related when like I went to college. The career services at my school didn't really like help me find anything like that I feel like would have like grabbed me. So I ended up at a community college in Connecticut doing like general communications, like mass media stuff, broadcast, and like there was like a couple like recording programs, but they were like really like I mean, I got my hands on some tape then, and I got like it was to work more in Pro Tools and do some more DAW related stuff. But like it was really kind of like an afterthought to like maybe you want to work for NBC and hold like a boom mic or like run a switchboard or something like that. It was like all after, so it didn't really grab me the way that I wanted to. So I after a few semesters at community college, I took a step back from school and pursued what was going to be a career in culinary arts. I actually I cooked all of my way through high school, and then after high school and college, like that's how like I like made money, was working in restaurants, and I was doing pretty well at it. So I thought that maybe that's what I was going to do, and I pursued that for a few years until I realized I was absolutely miserable. Sometimes you don't realize you're miserable until like you're in the thick of being absolutely miserable.
Right.
It took a couple life awakenings for me to see it, but like I always told myself when I was working in restaurants, like I was a sous chef for a while, and I was under some people, and I was doing it at a pretty young age, that like if I ever got control of like a kitchen, I got to staff it the way I wanted to. I got to design a menu. I got to like really kind of like organize things the way I wanted to. That I would like it then. So like I was like focused on like working my way up the ladder in a kitchen, and then I got that opportunity. The kitchen manager at the place I was working at left, and then I got just they didn't have anyone in line, so they just started having me do it, and I was even more miserable. Turns out it wasn't the fact that I didn't have control over something. It was the actual thing. I just didn't want it at all. At that point, I was like 22, I think. And I decided, I remember the exact moment laying in my bed one morning, staring at the ceiling. It was like in February. I was like looking at the ceiling, and I was like, I hate everything about my life. And I got to change something about this. I'm 22 years old. I shouldn't feel this way. So it was pretty fast that like I decided that I needed to actually give audio another try, like find the right program, find the right community, find something else that wasn't just the community college down the road. And that's when I pretty fast, like that was February. In September, I was living in Boston, and I was back in school, and I was actually giving it a real go. And then, from there on out, I graduated, I went to internships, and just kind of chipping away at it ever since.
That's really great. So when you went to college for audio, what year are we talking about here?
This was 2010.
2010.
I moved to Boston. Yeah.
Okay. So there was and there still is, but there was a thriving music scene in Boston and a lot of studios, right?
Yeah.
So how did you end up at the Bridge?
So my career service place program at school, I went and I said I want internships, and I interned at a couple different places, and I learned a lot from all of them. But the Bridge was the last place I interned. I went to a couple different studios, and I wanted to check out people's different workflows, different setups. I really kind of wanted to like see how a lot of people do it, so that I could like figure out what worked for me. And the Bridge was I started interning here at September of 2011. And it just kind of immediately spoke to me. Like when I walked through the door, like it's lots changed since then. But like there was this giant room you walk in, and like there was like a particular like vibe and aesthetic that felt nice. And like from the minute I sat down for my interview, I felt very comfortable there, and I felt like very creatively inspired. And like the other places, while were nice, they didn't immediately grab me the way this place did, and I knew that I wanted to spend some time here. I didn't know it was going to be 12 years.
Right. I definitely want to go into more about the bridge, but before we do, in this arc from when you were in school to where you were trying to kind of find yourself and what you were going to be doing for the rest of your life, were there any mentors or anything or anyone who really inspired you to kind of go down this path?
Totally. My folks have always been my biggest supporters, and I'm really, really lucky to have them both. Like even like I touched on a little bit earlier, when I was playing in bands, like they really like fostered me wanting to play, like not even just in school band, but like rock bands. They let us like rehearse at the house. They let me cannibalize their computer for recording. They would go to my shows. Like they would literally, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hartford music scene, but they would go to the Webster Theater to see their high school, their son's thrash metal band play.
I'm assuming that it was a colorful crowd.
It was a very colorful crowd, but they were very supportive of me throughout the whole process, and like they were ecstatic when I approached them because they knew that I wasn't like really happy with what I was doing, and they were ecstatic when I said I want to move away and go back to school and figure it out. They helped me throughout the process, and they pushed me out to do it. So they were very supportive. I've had a lot of really good teachers. Like I said earlier, my high school music teachers were all really, really important for me, like both musically, but also like just life-wise. Like I'm still connected to all three of them, and we share notes every once in a while. They're incredible. And then even in college, when I was in school, I had a lot of really, really good mentors through that program too that I'm still very friendly with.
That's awesome. That's a really interesting parallel about you and I. Is I also have 3 music directors from when I was in high school who I'm still connected with and who I still talk to all the time. And I really value especially now looking back, I really have valued their guidance and presence in my life in so many ways. Let's talk about the bridge.
Sure.
Can you give me like a brief kind of history of the bridge and kind of how it got started?
Sure. So I joined on later as an intern, but before me, it was the founders were Owen Curtin, our good friend, and Janos Fulop, also our good friend. Janos, whose producer's name is The Archetype, was one of Owen's students at Emerson. And in about 2008, they were kind of like finding places to work, and they were kind of finding that they needed to like, I think Owen had like this like smaller, like kind of like overdub, like sound booth like space that was a little bit smaller, and he was having to outsource like larger recordings to other places and bring the mix back. And Janos was looking for a place after he had graduated to like start working himself. So the two of them found this place in 2008 and were able to get it up and running. Opened in 2009, and like I said, I wasn't there for that. I joined it in 2011, and when I first walked in, it was one of the biggest live rooms I've ever seen. It's still rather big, but it was just this giant room that I remember sitting down for my interview on a couch in the middle of the live room, and I was just like looking around, like, oh my god, like this place is fucking huge. At that point, I had only been in like smaller like live rooms, so like it was like really just like it felt like a venue. Like we get that a lot because of the raised like stage area, but after interning here for about a year or so, I actually got my first opportunity to do work here, but it wasn't audio work. So while I was interning here, I was basically trying to do whatever I could that wasn't restaurant work to support myself. So it was a really interesting tapestry of gigs. I was over at High Output unloading trucks at their film production sites. I was freelancing stuff for AVFX. I was recording hip hop in my Alston apartment. I was going anywhere I could with the microphones that I had amassed to record folk singers. Like I was really doing my best to like not set foot in a restaurant after I graduated, because I knew that if I didn't clean break it, I'd always have that be a part of my life. So any way I could do something that was like adjacent to audio and make money, I was trying to do that on top of interning. And one of the gigs I ended up landing, and I had to kind of fib my way into getting this, was I was an accounts and credits manager for a company called Music Studio Direct. It was like a small dealership that was in Alston. And I had, told them that I had QuickBooks and accounting experience when I did not, because I just wanted something that was 9 to 5, a paycheck that I could count on. And like I said, it checked the box of audio adjacent because we were a dealership. So I did the interview for the position. I went home and I watched some YouTube videos on QuickBooks and thumbed my way through it, and I got the gig. The reason why I talk about that was because Janosch, he, through interning through him, he found out that I was doing this accounts and credits position, and they needed a bookkeeper at the bridge. So before I ever got a chance to engineer anything, they had me keeping their books, like running QuickBooks. And that was my foot through the door to engineering here, was because they had an engineer at the time who had left or taken a step back. And because they had already gotten to know me and trust me through this accounting position, they gave me the first opportunity to step in and do some engineering. Yeah. And, it kind of spider-webbed from there.
Yeah, I would love if you could just say a couple things about what it's like to do books at a studio as being your foot in the door, because that is a skill that not many people have right off the bat if they work in a studio.
Oh, the books that I inherited here at the studio, before I started doing stuff here, they were atrocious. Like, it was crazy. Like, people were just leaving cash in like cash boxes, and there was no idea of where it came from or how to assign it to clients. And we have an accountant, obviously, that helps us through all the tax process. But managing books at a studio, especially one that has many people working at it, not just one person, you have to chase people to fill out timesheets. You have to figure out where payments come from. And now, decade later, we have a very good system and everyone is great about it. But getting in for the first time and not really knowing much about the business and not knowing anything about where things are, it was definitely a learning process for me.
Yeah, a very valuable one, I'm sure. So the bridge started in 2009.
Yep.
And it's gone through a couple of iterations, correct? I mean, you guys have done a lot of work over there.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about the work that's been done there to kind of change things around.
Sure.
But can you tell me some of the big upgrades that you guys have done in the last few years?
Sure. So the first big milestone I can think of was, like I said, we opened in 2009. And when we opened up, it was basically just everybody bring what they have and we'll put it in the same room, we'll plug it in and go, and then we'll see what happens from there on out. There was no plan for what if we want to do this in the future, or what if we want to change this or do that. It was very much just set up, go, we'll reevaluate in 5 years and see if we're still alive, and then what we'll do from there. So when 2015 rolled around, we were still alive and we wanted to build for the future. So we completely shut down for a couple months, hired some skilled technicians in the area, and rewired the entire studio in a way that we felt like we wanted to work towards the future. The biggest change being, besides the fact that everything is labeled and solid and organized and built for the future. Is we got rid of our console. We had this very mediocre Atari console we were working with here, and we explored some options as far as consoles go. We were like, okay, well, we could do this control surface from Avid. Like, what would happen if we took out Alone and we got like a really fancy Neve console, like what we wanted to do. And then when we landed on it, we looked at each other and we're just like, we love working on consoles. It's a lot of fun. There's so much creative musical things that are unique to working on consoles. But at the end of the day, I feel like what most folks want is just a creative sitting here ready to make creative stuff. And we felt that rather than sinking all of our money into a console that would be mostly for us and our enjoyment, like we would better save those funds for things that would help creatives be their best creative selves here. More instruments, a better creative layout, and better amplifiers, stuff like that. And we didn't obviously amass all that stuff at once, but rather than really investing in this really big console, we decided to keep everything modular here, easy. We really invested heavily into 500 series stuff, outboard gear, and we put a giant Native Instruments control surface where the console would be, just to kind of help signify that we are just musicians looking to help musicians make music at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have to say, if anybody goes to your website or looks at the pictures on your Instagram, they'll see that there's not really a want as far as outboard gear goes, and the absence of a large format analog console is, it's nobody cares. It's a beautiful.
Like I said, it's fun. Every once in a while, I'll do a record outside of this place, and I'll get my hands on a Trident board, and I'm like, oh shit, maybe I do want to do this, and maybe someday in the future we will. But at the time, with the funds that we had and the way we saw workflows going, we felt like it was just not necessary, especially with what folks expect recall wise right now. I still get calls all the time. It's like, you know what, this record's been done for 3 weeks, but can you go back in and turn the toms up just 1 dB? I can accommodate those things in a pretty fast format because I don't have to call up a mix recall.
I agree. I have a little smaller operation here, and I have gone back and forth with the whole console thing. And at the end of the day, recall is just it's the same. It's the same situation. Just being able to open up a session from 6 months, a year, 2 years before, and make those changes. I don't miss a console. I love going to see them though. I love going to studios that have large, beautiful, sometimes vintage consoles, but I'm totally on the same page with you there.
Yeah.
So,
we love them because we don't have to maintain them. We get to work on them and leave.
Absolutely. We still have to maintain the hardware that we do have.
Sure.
But it's not not going to take us down for a week while somebody finds a gremlin in one of the channels or the master section or no thank you. But God bless those who take on that challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to the rewiring our A room, a big change that happened was we partitioned the live room in 2012. So when I walked in, it's this giant room. We're looking at the space and how we could make it more functional for everyone. And before we partitioned the live room, there was no lounge. We have a B room now. There is no B room. We had no office. It was just one big open space. And while impressive, there was no place to hang out, for artists who might be waiting for their session to start. There was no place to make a cup of coffee without interrupting drum recording. You couldn't even go to the bathroom without waiting for a take to be done. The big thing was installing this wall that partitioned our live room so that we could kind of restructure the space in a way that gave us more flexibility. And that was definitely a stepped process. The first thing that went up was the wall, and then we just stuck a computer computer in the corner, and like we weren't even really thinking B room at the time. We were thinking about we need a lounge. They were like, well, this is enough space. Like, rather than have it being an office, why don't we stick a Pro Tools machine in here so that we can do quick edits? Quick edits turned into overdubs. Overdubs turned into quick mixes, and then finally we saw that there was definitely enough room, and there was a need for a smaller room, like so that folks didn't have to book like the big room. Having a smaller secondary room for a lesser rate with a house engineer was a market I felt like people needed, because I was doing it at the time. I was charging pretty similar rates to work out of my bedroom in Allinson. Having a room that is $40 an hour with an engineer, and knowing that your files are safe and you get to go to like a professional environment and have a lounge, have like a professional experience, was something that I felt was needed for our space, and to kind of take it to the next level. It's been really good for folks because we love working with like artists who are like seasoned and working on records for years and years and years, but we also love working with people who are maybe recording for their first time, and having a smaller room that is less intimidating and more affordable kind of helps us stay within the arts community that is still developing. You know, maybe they work in our B room for their first record, they get more comfortable, and then they upgrade to our A room. But having that like in between smaller room was definitely vital to our development as a studio.
The Bridge is definitely a nerve center of a well-developed music community in the Boston area. Who are the kinds of people who come in and work with you?
We definitely have a wide array of folks who work here, and I think that's by nature of myself and the community that I spend most of my time in, and then my business partner Janos, the community that he spends his time in. He is a renowned producer in hip-hop music, pop music. That's really been his central focus, and he's been doing that for years and years and years, and he's quite good at it. And when I first started here, and I was interning, it was basically a hip-hop studio. I mean, I didn't meet Owen until about 3-4 months into like my internship here, and he was the person who did the more like rock band-oriented stuff. And like, so a lot of my internship here was spending time watching Janos record and produce hip-hop music. And I, while I have a deep love for hip-hop and have worked on a lot of hip-hop music, I've always been more geared towards recording bands and heavier music. So as I was trying to develop my own clientele, those were the shows I would go to. I would go to rock shows. I'd go to O'Brien's. I'd go to all of the hole-in-the-wall venues. I'd go to Alston house party shows back when, I could muster the strength to do it. And that is like really what I focused on, like getting gigs like that. And just by way of me really developing that part of my community and working with them here and are still continuing the hip-hop stuff, we get really a wide array of everything here. I've been really lucky. A lot of folks have taken chances on me because I've, like most, I was just like this wide-eyed kid who was just going to shows saying, I like your band, and then connecting with them, and then just not necessarily being like, hey, you should record with me, but like what I would do was I'm a fan. Like I just like bands. I like connecting with people. I like being in the scene, and you stay interested enough in someone eventually that I feel like if it's they'll find their own way of figuring out like what you do and whether or not it's going to work. And you do a good job for one person, they tell the next person, and you eventually, before you know it, you're working with a bunch of really, really dope artists. And I've just been really fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time a lot of different instances and connected with the right folks. And this past year has been one of my favorite creative years. I've worked on a lot of records this past year that like were very, very, very special to me. And I'm very excited about some of the stuff that's coming out.
Are there any like memorable moments that you've had as an engineer in the last few years that you can tell us about?
I've just been more creatively involved with a lot of the records that I'm working on. I feel like I'm getting a lot more gigs that are coming to me because people are familiar with my work and they want me to do the thing that I did with someone else. Like, not necessarily to a T, but they heard something that they like of mine, and they're not just coming to me because they want me to capture a good recording, or because I have a big drum room, or because I have this particular amplifier. They're coming to the Bridge because they want me to look at what they have and through my creative lens and help them get that extra 10% that may be missing. And getting more of those gigs is really filled my heart up a lot, because that's why we do it, right? I'm happy to, make any sort of noise. I love just tracking a record, and, I'm happy to do like any sort of like, yeah, our job really can be any sort of like spectrum. It could be just a recording, could be just mixing, it could be just mastering, and I do all of those different things. But my favorite ones are the folks that ask me to get in on pre-production, talk about song arrangement, and like help them like develop their stuff. And when you feel like you've made an impact in someone else's art, that wouldn't have been there otherwise, those are my favorite moments. And it's like these little things, like you go to a show and you see a band that you made a record with, and they like to pedal so much that you have your studio, it's on their board now. Or that vocal harmony that you helped write is now being performed live. Or just anything like that, like something that wasn't there until like you helped them see something differently about their art, are my favorite moments.
Yeah, that is the real value of going to a recording studio and working with someone who has had the benefit of working with hundreds and hundreds of people in all of these different creative situations. There's definitely like something to be said about a person who kind of goes off on their own and tries to do everything themselves, and more power to those people for sure. But I agree with you 100%. It's a great feeling when you're able to be in that position to like help these things come to life. Which leads to my next question. What do you see in the future for the studio?
Well, we are definitely always forward thinking as far as like the things we want to do to the space to make it better. Big picture, we'd love to add on to the building. Obviously, that is nowhere near coming to fruition because there's a lot of planning that goes into that. But long way down the road, we want to add a third room. We want to add to the building and make it more expansive, something that would be like in between our A room and our B room. So something that is like has a bigger live room, because our B room is like just an edit lab production suite with a vocal booth. So you can't track drums in it. You can't do like a lot of simultaneous recording in it. So something that is in between our big A room and our B room is something that we would love to add in the future. We definitely have a lot of more tech things that are we're staring down. We're looking at some computer upgrades, some interface upgrades. We're in the middle of trying to map all that stuff up. I think that is going to start to take place in the next few months. We definitely want to keep growing as far as like what we may be able to offer. We're always thinking about like different ways to be supportive within our community. We've kicked around like ideas and how to, because we're a staff-based studio, like we're trying to figure out ways to like more folks feel like they can come in and make a record here with maybe their engineer they like to work with, because like while there's like some great facilities in the area that do that on a more freelance base, we're thinking about ways how we could be more accessible to people in that way, just by nature of like making it easier to like book this place, the logistics behind running this place. We're always trying to like make it so that like we can be accessible to everyone. So we have some ideas kicking around like there. Yeah, just any way we can grow and be supportive and be better in the Boston music community is something that we're always taking a look at. And as you can imagine, it's fluid, just like anything else in this industry. But we are always kind of got our finger on like how can we be better at what we're doing.
Yes, it takes a lot of dedication, hard work, effort, sacrifice. Sometimes things don't always work out the way that you want them to, and sometimes something wonderfully unexpected happens, and that's just all part of running a small business, running a studio. And I think the Bridge is one of the shining examples of a recording studio in New England that does it and does it correct. I also think everybody should go look at your Instagram. I think it is the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful social media recording studio account I think I've seen in a long time. It's there's profiles on everybody that works at the studio, all the photography. You can really see the B room, the Studio A control room, the live room. You can see that this is a studio that is always on. Question, what is this afternoon? What is this coffee? It's like this Monday coffee thing that you're doing on Instagram. What is that all about?
Yes. So we're always trying to find ways, not only just to showcase the studio itself, but we also want to showcase the artists that we work with. So we have the idea, we have these fancy new mugs that we have at the studio now with our logo, and we want to showcase our space. So we take a photo with something that may be interesting at the studio and then tag an artist that has made a record here and share their music that has been recorded on here. The idea being, not only do we, record and mix your music and help you realize it, but we want to support you even after like the record has been made. So we're always trying to find ways that we can share the art of the artists that work here with us, and that was just like this fun creative way that we came up with to like be able to do that, just constantly just be sharing and showing people not only our space but the folks who choose to make music with us.
Yeah, it's really awesome. So if you want to take a look at their Instagram, it's instagram.com/The Bridge Sound and Stage. And what is your website?
thebridgesoundandstage.com.
You guys have really improved this live room, the way it looks, like with all of the wood and the absorbers. And you recently made a couple of other changes, right?
Yep, we just our good friends at Soundwall Construction built us a new amp isolation room, which has been fantastic. We had this like spot in our live room where we used to just kind of wheel the piano into. That we were just trying to figure out ways of having more isolation, more flexibility for live recording, because that's like how I do most of my records is, I get the band playing in the room live, but I isolate a lot of the amplifiers so that I get the live band feeling without having to commit to any bleed. And I found myself needing, more amp isolation. And then rather than like, we looked at like trying to like soundproof our Studio B control room a little bit more to like use that more as an amp ISO room, because it is wired to our Studio A to be an emergency ISO booth. But rather than, invest like all of this time and energy and money into like making a control room, an isolation room on top of it, we're just like, if we're just going to shove amplifiers, there's this like corner in the live room like that is not being used. Let's build like a new amp ISO room. And having that has given us so much more flexibility for live recording. It's been great. We just put new floors in. I can't remember if those are on the site just yet.
I don't think so. I'm still seeing checkerboard on the website.
The checkerboard is gone. The checkerboard lives on in the lounge. It's still ska in the lounge, but it's no longer ska in the live room. There were some folks who I work with who are very upset that the ska floor is gone.
That's the greatest thing I've heard today. It's still ska in the lounge.
Yes.
That's hilarious. No, there are pictures on Instagram of the new floor, and it is gorgeous.
We're going to be revitalizing our site in the next few weeks, so there's going to be a lot of new photos that go up there.
That's great. That's really great. Well, listen, Alex, I just want to express my gratitude for your time today. Thank you so much for talking to me about your journey and the bridge, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Yes, I hope to see you too. I'm going to try to make it out to that AES networking night at Q. I got that circled on my calendar.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. The local Boston AES has a networking night at Q Division Studios on September 20th. and we've got more coming on the way. And thank you so much for listening. The High Pass Podcast is a production of Quiet House Media and is lovingly produced and edited by yours truly, Derek Blackburn. I'm talking in the third person again. If you have any questions or comments, or you just want to drop us a line, you can go to highpasspodcast.com/contact. I read all the mail you guys send me, so you got something nice to say it to my face.